to die today in a minute or two.
A thing distinctly hard to say and harder still to do.
For there'll be a tattoo, a quarter to two, a rat-a-tat-a-tat-a-tat-a-tat-a-two,
And the dragon will come when he hears the drum at a minute or two till two today, at a minute or two till two. Yeah,
Don't forget the Pleasant Pheasant Plucker.
Oh, Pleasant Valley Pheasant Pluckers.
Back when I was living in Tropical Gardens.
I'm not the fig plucker, but the fig plucker suck. And I'll pluck figs. The fig plucker
All right, with that burp, I'm going to say shut up.
You recording?
Welcome to this week's episode of The List Game. Yes, we have officially changed the name a while back.
I don't like change. So it's a game now?
The List is a conversational improv game. Each of our panel members has a list of topics and or phrases that were drawn from a hat. Their goal is to sneak those topics or phrases into the conversation. Another member of the panel, hearing thus, can say, "That's on your list." And if they're right, they get a point. You can bluff, or if they're wrong, you get a point. The List Game is listener supported. Join the List Game community at www.patreon.com/listgame. To contact the List Game crew, email listgame@cox.net. C-O-X.
Yeah.
We have with us today Mr. Rod Diaz, Mr. Blake Benlin,
Hey.
Mr. Dean Garcia,
Heyo.
and Mr. Sam Winnie with his cry of doom. This marks two momentous occasions. One, it's the 10th episode of the List Game. Sadly, it is also the first
Network
one
deal.
where there is no girl on the panel. No
Mackenzie's
female.
just going to be very quiet today.
Oh yeah, that's right. I've got her tied up under the couch there.
Down with girls.
Remember we brought up the GIMP costume?
Locked a zipper.
She's not gonna be happy when she finds out that the first episode she's like absent from, and it's just us dudes. Instantly we go to like
Oh, we got to do.
the GIMP costume.
It's
Well, she's
important.
under the couch, so
That's
I think
right.
she can hear.
She'd have expected no less.
She has her headphones on.
I just like clarify. I didn't think of that.
I didn't
no
think
part in
I
this.
have no part of this. I'm not
with
involved.
these dudes. These are weirdos.
For our listeners, I'm going to do an experiment on this episode of the List Game. I'm going to give you guys all of the topics and phrases that are from the hat in everybody's hands so you can know them ahead of time. If you don't want to know, you want to skip ahead of this part. I'm going to list them off right now. Fossils of machines, super strong sandals, water flow conveyor belts, laser chisel, forest giants, communicating through dance, solar flares, cutting stone with a water pick, the Bermuda Triangle, one-man submarine, the Flintstones car, curse on explorers, Area 51, spelunking in teams, groveling to the gods, Capricorn's revenge, the slaves of the slaves, backwards calendar, homing beacon, lifting with a tractor beam, tidal wave and or tsunami, tunnel drilling vehicle, cut of your jib, Pokemon collectors, talking with dolphins, erupting volcano, spaceship hieroglyphs, gnomes and fairies, Oogie Boogie Man, landing strips. There you go. That's all the cards that are in everybody's hands. If you like it this way, or if you don't like it this way, I would love your feedback. Please email us at listgame@cox.net. C-O-X. Let me know what you think. And now I'll let you enjoy the List Game, episode 10. All right. This
here for the
week's List Game will be a discussion about the mysteries of ancient civilizations. Göbekli Tepe, the Great Pyramids, the Baalbek Enigma, crop circles, the Long U Caves, and there's many more that you could bring up. up to you guys. Where did these things come from, and how were they built?
Aliens. Just gonna
Man,
put
that
out
came up
there.
early.
I disagree, Blake. I
And that's
disagree.
the episode.
I think it was dinosaurs that built the pyramids.
So-
It's obvious.
You're right. How else could they move stones that size?
Exactly.
They hook them up to
I think
dinosaurs on harnesses.
I think it's dinosaurs that built the aliens.
I think
Dinosaurs are the aliens.
So
Have you seen Pacific Rim?
So here's one thing that I think is pretty interesting is that the majority of all the really interesting things are underwater. And underwater you'll find all these big monolithic rocks just like, but a huge amount of them are underwater. And
Right.
the reason that they're underwater is
Is a
that
tsunami?
no, it's because there was an ice age, right? There were like 9 ice ages before now, right? And those 9 ice ages, during that time, a vast majority of the water on the planet was locked into miles high sheets of ice that were sitting on top of continents, right? Across the globe. And the total amount of displacement of the ocean water is about 1,000 feet, maybe more. So, and the last glacial maximum was about 24,000 years ago. So 24,000 years ago, the sea level was about 1,000 feet lower than it is currently, right? And 80% of humans tend to live on the coastline. So
Hence the many civilizations that we find.
it's all underwater is my point.
Remnants
It's
of-
all underwater. And the way that it went away is interesting because glacial science has shown that when these huge glaciers melted, they didn't like uniformly melt, right? What happens is and you can go to Greenland and see this now, it's happening. Lakes form inside the glaciers. Massive lakes form inside these glaciers. And the glaciers hold these things until at a critical point, right, the walls become a little too thin and it breaks. And when that does, it's cataclysmic when these things break. And this is what formed the Finger Lakes in New York, are an event that happened about 6,000 to 7,000 years ago, where a massive glacier broke loose and all the rocks that were underneath it got pushed, and it carved out these huge gouges that became the Finger Lakes in New York. There's a number of different geological features that I can point out to you across this globe, all created by the event when these glaciers went away. And whatever civilizations existed at that time were destroyed and decimated.
Carving with a giant water pick.
I never would have thought that. I always assumed that the underwater stuff always got there because of tidal waves or tsunamis and stuff like that.
The wrath of the gods.
Yeah, exactly. Force of nature,
the
stuff like that.
There-
Well, I guess it was a force of nature.
Yeah, it absolutely was. I mean, it technically, the reason why there are flood myths everywhere in every culture throughout the entire world is because there were massive floods throughout this entire world. It happened when the glaciers receded. Right? These glaciers were beyond massive. I mean, literally in New York City, it was a 2-mile high wall of ice.
So this is
So try to envision in your mind like the tallest buildings we have would be minuscule little tiny specks on the wall of ice.
It's like the wall in Game of Thrones.
And in fact, another interesting feature or event that occurred
Actually,
from this.
before you continue, Rob,
Yeah, yeah.
just to clarify, like this was really prominent in like the Manhattan area, like that caused Finger Lakes?
the entire continent,
this is probably
the
how
entire north,
Atlantis
the-
came to be underwater.
from
We're gonna bring
Asia.
that up.
The entirety of Alaska, the entirety of the north of Russia, the entirety of the north of Europe, all the way to Britain, all the way across all of Greenland, all of Iceland, and the entire north of Canada was entirely engulfed in this huge, massive glacial monstrosity.
This is
Actually, the
time
reason
with the
I
ice
bring-
bridge
That-
between.
absolutely.
In more stories than just the Bible, the flood is like 40 days and 40 nights. It's because this occurred and it was an effect all over the world. It didn't necessarily flood every part of the world, but as Rod pointed out, most of the civilizations were on coastlines.
Yeah, we live on coastlines.
Actually, I bring up the whole.
So no, it was
I
not
don't know why I
rain.
thought of this, but I imagine like considering the Manhattan area, like thousands of years ago. I like to think that even back then there was like a very angry Armenian cab driver just like in the middle of this, all of this stuff, like shouting at the ice, like at the
Hey,
ice
move
guy,
your
like,
ass!
Hey, get the fuck out of the way! I got places to be.
What are you doing? It's freezing out here.
He's driving his brontosaurus with
what
7
Armenian
people on the
accent?
No,
tail.
he's just like
Maybe.
driving a little Flintstones car, like get out of the way.
Flintstones car.
I imagine.
Everybody run at the same time.
Flintstones Ice Age. I would watch that TV show.
Totally.
No, the Flintstones, if it was just like exactly like New York, except they function like the Flintstones civilization.
Is the Flintstones
bunch of rock
not exactly like New
skyscrapers.
York?
Hey, what?
Is the Flintstones not exactly like New York? I mean,
I
like
don't know.
Fred going around, going to work in the construction business. It's
I don't
New
know,
York,
man.
grabbing
It's-
You got the big crane dinosaur that has the bricks on its head. That's how they built the pyramids.
yeah, exactly. Dinosaurs. Back to dinosaurs.
Back
Building
to
pyramids.
dinosaurs.
Yeah. See,
Oh,
see, that's
geez.
how it happened.
Okay. So my just to finish off like some of the changes that occurred when this huge sheet of ice left. It was pressing down on the continental shelves. Now, you may or may not be aware, the planet has these continental shelves that kind of float on the mantle. The interior of the planet is molten lava and very, very hot, right? And rock has cooled and floated to the surface. And the majority of the continents are all made out of granite, and granite floats on top of the mantle. So, and it moves, like it's constantly going back into the mantle, and new stuff is constantly coming up, and it causes, all sorts of earthquakes and volcanoes.
So just to clarify, like when there's an erupting volcano, like is it like those shelves kind of like pushing stuff to the surface? Is it kind of like just like that circulation kind of building pressure spots? How does that work?
What happens? There's different kinds, but typically there's where the Earth is going back into the mantle. It creates hotspots and it creates fissures, and through those fissures, molten lava will rise up. Push
I like
through
to
the
call
mantle,
this an earth shark.
and eventually pops through, right? Depending on the amount of pressure. And so what happens is that when the tons and tons and tons and tons of weight lifted off of the continental shelves, that caused for the continental shelves to spring. So all of our continental shelves are still springing back from the last ice age. In fact, they're still moving right now. We can measure it. And the entire seafloor actually came up a bit. Actually, no, I got that reversed. Actually went down a bit because of the amount of water that went into the oceans, made the oceans heavier. And that caused for the seafloor to fall. Yeah. It's all in motion, man. All of it. I tried to be making this point since I got here. Everything is
Cities
always
that
in
were
motion.
all around
Everything.
coasts
Always.
just dropped right in. Entire islands fell. Which brings us back to something Dean brought up, Atlantis. That's one of the ones I like to talk about myself, because in one of the places that they believe they have found Atlantis, pardon me for not remembering the location at the moment, but it's the one that you'll see on various documentaries.
Off
where
of
there's-
Cuba?
Yes, near the Bermuda Triangle.
Yeah,
Correct.
yeah, I read into that.
And they actually found, for lack of a better term, fossils of machines. I don't know if fossil is the correct word, but fossils of machines. They found like they were able to reconstruct these things with gears and whatnot out of the impressions that they found in the stone. And they're not even sure what these machines were supposed to do, but they could tell, well, these are gears and stuff with fulcrums and levers that were supposed to move things.
Little known fact:
Was it-
Atlantis was actually destroyed because they ran on Windows Vista. That's what happens, bitch. That's what happens when you run your dams using shitty software.
You know, and they might have survived it if they hadn't had Windows ME before that.
So if Atlantis isn't like the Bermuda Triangle area, could that be the reason why whenever ships go there, they have that whole phenomenon go on with them and stuff?
One theory is that the Bermuda Triangle
Bermuda.
exists because that's where Atlantis went down, and they had some kind of weird technology that has to do with gamma rays and radar and everything and magnetics or whatever. That's why planes.
Crystal energy.
Kind of like a futuristic version of a curse.
But there you go. And that's why their instruments get messed up when they fly over it, and ships get lost and everything because they're being messed with by whatever's still left of Atlantis that's still going. There's even theories that there was a Tesla-like sharing of power, like they had some kind of electricity.
So Disney was right. They have giant crystals and shit.
I feel
Or
like
maybe
it would
it's
be
just submerged dinosaurs.
Right, Michael J. Fox.
It's the crystals from the Slee Stack in the Land of the Lost.
So fun fact I like to always bring up about dinosaurs. You know, we like to talk about dinosaurs like they're gone, like they went extinct.
they're
right?
birds.
Exactly. And that's the point I want to bring up. Dinosaurs never left, right? If you want to go pet a dinosaur, just find your nearest bird and pet it. Because
When was the last
dinosaurs
time you
evolved.
Pet a bird?
What's that?
When was the last time you pet a bird?
I
you
had
just go
a
up to a chicken and just like
You,
I've
you
done
certainly
that, yeah.
could.
Like a week ago, like
You certainly
there was this
could.
guy on the pier with a bunch of birds.
Yeah.
I mean,
and-
the
and
pheasant,
they're-
the
they're-
Pleasant Valley pheasant pluckers,
you can-
they're always petting.
I've got a little friend that
You
I've
could be
called a bird before that I've quite a few
you
times.
D. Reynolds.
You can become a hawk trainer and get a hawk and you get one of those gloves and you can pet your hawk that you train and you can
Man,
feed
I fed
it.
my hawk last night. What about it?
And a hawk
Is that what we're calling it these days?
a hawk is definitely like some kind of velociraptor creature if you put the two.
And all birds
next to
really
each
are.
other.
Did you know that chicken has T-Rex DNA in it?
Yes, I
Wait,
did
Rod,
know that.
hold on a second.
Also,
Rod, hold on a second. I don't remember where I found this, but there's a picture I found of what would happen if, like, we interpreted the fossils of T-Rexes wrong, so that we interpret them to have, like, chicken-esque feathers.
They actually had
Just a
big,
ball
long
of
arms.
feathers. Yeah. No, hold on a second.
They did
While
start
he's
finding
looking at it,
dinosaurs with
I'll even
chickens.
mention, since we brought up the bird thing, I had a Senegal parrot for years and years, and they lived to be like 90 years old. Wow. Fortunately, my ex-wife made sure that it didn't. But
Found it.
this thing proved to me on more than one occasion that it was a very small dinosaur. The way
it's adorable.
this thing,
The way they move.
yeah, the way they move.
Yeah.
We gave him free reign in the house, and he would walk into the kitchen and jump up onto the counter and watch him just tear into some chicken or something. That's a T-Rex. I'm watching
Yeah.
a dinosaur go at it
Totally,
right now.
totally.
Actually, they
Oh, wait, I found a
They-
better picture of it. Look.
I wonder if you ate a T-Rex.
This is
if
an
it would
audio
taste like
podcast.
chicken.
I do not want to reference pictures unless you describe them very well.
I know. Okay. Essentially, I found a picture that I found, well, a while back. There's essentially a sketch of what would it look like if a T-Rex was feathered in such a way that's similar to a chicken, or like blue-footed booby.
Wait a minute, Sam. That's a picture of your mom.
Booby.
He said booby.
Honestly, I don't know a lot of bird names. I just wanted to say that. But in any event,
Don't forget the spotted dick. There's another bird.
that's a kind of shitty dessert. It's from Britain.
Isn't it named after a bird?
I don't know.
there's the dick, but that's kind
Well,
of.
if you don't know,
that's a
then don't
deer.
talk about
Dick chocolate.
Don't bring up the unknown.
Only guys who watch a lot of YouTube will get that. But in any event, I'm sharing the picture right here. It looks adorable as hell. It's just like this chubby looking T-Rex. I keep on expecting it to make like little chirping
it.
sounds. It's so cute.
Well, I once saw a video that of a bunch of scientists who wanted to know more how a dinosaur would walk, and to figure this out, they attached a plunger to a chicken's butt.
Yep. Nice. Awesome.
That sounds hilarious.
That is really funny.
And actually, it was really cool because it did walk like how you would expect a dinosaur to walk.
That's hilarious.
Hours of entertainment.
Now we know why Atlantis failed, because they didn't think of that shit.
So I think part of the whole thing is like we don't generally conceptualize time properly, right? Our lifetimes are really short, right? And days go by really fast, so we can't really think about like what 20,000 years feels or sounds like, or what
Yeah,
that
it's
actually
impossible to have perspective.
right. And so, and just to throw out like what the typical scientific community will say about human evolution, and they'll say that we didn't start making civilizations till about 5,000 years ago. That's the consensus view. But all the things we're talking about that are underwater, like they weren't above water before 10 to 12, sometimes 20,000 years ago. And so what I'm proposing is that this modern round, the post-apocalyptic water ending time, right, that occurred between 24,000 and 6,000 years ago, wiped out a pre-existing, totally advanced civilization that might have been totally spanning the globe, much like we are now.
Rod, have you been playing Mass Effect?
No, I don't play Mass Effect.
Oh. Well, what you described is essentially just like Mass Effect, except instead of, cataclysmic of natural events, there are giant finger robots that talk with a rigid
giant
voice.
lice that go around.
Giant ass weird lights.
You don't need any of those things because we had an ice age, and that ice age went away, and that going away of that ice age caused for unimaginable upheaval, not just the flooding, but also when the tectonic plates sprung up, it also caused huge amounts of earthquakes. There were earthquakes that were so big in the north of Europe that you can still see today the wave. There's like a rocks that are in the form of a wave that was caused by the earthquake. It was over a 9-point earthquake that caused for the rocks to look like a wave. And it's still there.
Oh man, that just gave me such a great new theory. Okay, so this wave happens, right? And I'm going to Easter Island, right, where the big heads are sticking out of the ground. Okay, these were actually giants. These were big dudes that were surfing, right? And the wave comes and there's volcanoes going off, and these dudes are surfing this huge wave, and the volcanic lava and ash and stuff hits them while they're surfing and covers their bodies, and they just get and the wave cools off the lava really fast, so they're like frozen in lava just like that, just boom, and it forms an island, and as the wave recedes, all the lava and stuff went up to their necks, and just their heads were sticking out.
Wait, why are they standing like fully upright with their hands at their sides? Who surfs like that?
Well, no, because as it hit them, they were trying to swim up, and,
So-
and the weight of the lava was pulling their limbs down. They see, and they just went like, oh shit, and they barely got their head above water as the stuff covered them up to the shoulders.
Oh, actually, they did.
Like all the preserved bodies at Pompeii.
They did start digging around the Easter Island heads and figured out there's more.
There
and
is
there's
bodies.
Bodies.
There
to
is
them.
bodies. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's some weird theories on how they did that too, because they carved them with them laying on their backs, right? And the on their backs, the stone was still connected to the ground, and then they little by little cut it so it was to a point as they carved the whole body. And then when they were ready to move it, I guess, I don't know if they moved logs up to it. Oh, no. They're all at the bottom of big hills, right? Big grassy hills. And they would cut off that last part that was holding basically their spine to the rest of the island. They would cut that off, and then the whole thing would just slide down the hill. And they would already have the little whole base area or whatever where they were going to stand it up ready. So they didn't actually have to move it from the carving area. It just slid right down there.
Here's my question, though. Actually, here's my theory. What if Stonehenge, if we're going to like combine theories here, is actually like the feet or like the toes of the Easter Island heads? It's like it's on the opposite side of the world. Maybe like they had some form of communication. They're just like, hey man, like you want to do this cool thing? It's like this guy with a big ass head is like going through the earth and his feet are coming out the other side. How cool would that be?
Also, I'd like to point out that spotted dick is actually a dessert, as it turns out. I don't know where I got
Told
it
ya.
in my head that it was a bird, but
it's Benlin's dessert. Yeah.
Nice.
What do you think about the great tit?
Nice.
The great tit. That's a kind
I
of
love
bird.
it.
I might have been thinking of that. Sure, let's go.
Okay,
with that.
so these toes are Stonehenge, and the heads are way over here at Easter Island. How did they communicate from that far across the world?
They
Carrier
shout.
pigeon.
No way, man. That brings us back to the alien.
Actually,
The pyramids are the nipples.
back to Rob's idea about
They're very
like,
large nipples.
past species existing.
Well, no,
that-
just an advanced civilization.
Advanced civilization.
I think humans just were more advanced
Than
before.
people think.
Way more.
Well, if they were advanced enough to create an electromagnetic thing that you were talking about with Atlantis, who's to say they didn't expect Atlantis to actually go under? So what if they figure out a way to survive this, and that they're just living there in Atlantis right now, and that's a safeguard to make explorers leave their area so they don't, find them, because they don't want these people to come and corrupt
The
their
Bermuda
civilization.
Triangle is a guard dog.
It's like
Exactly.
It's like Themyscira. It just has like this weird bubble around it.
Right, no men allowed. But yeah,
Totally.
so like kind of like a beware all travelers, do not enter this area kind of
Exactly.
thing.
Exactly.
All ye who enter stuff.
Don't go there.
I was pretty impressed
going back
while
to the-
reading
sorry.
up on the sunken city off the coast of Cuba. I was surprised how it was discovered. They stumbled upon it in 2001, and it seems to me like they haven't done a lot of exploring down there since.
They're like, we'll get to it.
It
Don't
does
mind it
raise
much.
some eyebrows.
It's not unusual. In fact, just about every major discovery that has been made, the advanced archaeological expeditions have all been blocked by their corresponding governments.
Yes.
Yeah, the Cuban government.
People with the
doesn't seem
power
that
and the money.
friendly.
I read an article about the one you're talking about near Cuba, where way down there, how many fathoms down there is it? I don't remember, but they found evidence of what they believe now. They're not sure yet. They haven't proven it, but it's something that is a little bit like Pompeii, where they're going to find actual humans that were covered in lava or something. And there's this whole area where they believe what they've found is like a religious gathering where everybody's groveling to the gods as they're being covered in lava. They didn't run anything. They're just sitting there praying or whatever. They're groveling to the gods as they got covered. And they're pretty sure they're going to be able to prove it, but they need some, pretty serious submarine action and stuff to get
Yeah,
down
they
there.
should send down a one-man submarine.
Well, I
Get
mean, like,
James
James
Cameron on the
Cameron,
phone.
exactly, in
There
the
were-
Mariana Trench.
there wasn't like much they could do when the fires of Hades is coming after you. All you can do is pray to your gods, right?
Yeah.
Actually,
How much
just-
can you do in a one-man submarine? What can you bring back up?
Actually, hold on a second. My ancient civilization's
some
knowledge is a
souvenirs.
little bit like rusty right
Pictures.
now. Was it Greece or Rome at the time when Pompeii went under?
I think
That was Rome.
It was
Rome.
Rome.
Oh, yeah, so-
Pompeii was part of Rome.
Yeah, so it wouldn't be Hades. It would be Vulcan, I think.
Vulcan, yeah.
Vulcan.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Totally.
my bad.
God, get your gods together,
So they
bro.
did. They all did the Spock dance while they were going down.
You're getting your cinematic universes mixed up, man.
And so one of
the
the
Romans just stole all the ideas from the
one
Greeks.
one of the things that I think is an interesting fact is that if you look at some of the really ancient sites, like in not only in South America, each one of the pyramids, and really throughout the world, India, each one of there's a ton of astronomical relevances.
Astronomical. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, like at certain key dates, right? Lights, on the solstice, the sun will beam through and hit through this series of passages and light up the interior of certain places in South America and in India. or you'll be able to look through a hole and see specific, like the Northern Star or some other key stars at certain dates. And so these astronomical references are sort of built into the architecture of a ton of different sites. And the thing that's really interesting
Can you give
about
me
it,
a specific civilization there?
like all of them.
Okay.
The Great Pyramid.
So the Mayans,
Yes, yes.
the pyramids. Okay, so
Yeah.
we got the full on, because that's the backwards calendar, right?
And the
Where
Mayans,
everything is counting the solar system the wrong way.
The Mayans have one that's really cool because on the right day, I believe it's the solstice, and one of their sites,
Summer solstice.
there'll be a snake that goes up the pyramid through the shadows that are formed throughout the day. It's fucking
Correct.
It's fucking amazing.
Correct.
It's amazing. And so they built into the architecture of their sites all of these references to astronomical facts or realities. And some of these things are literally 23,000 year cycles. And so that suggests that somebody's been observing and recording for possibly 23,000 years, right?
Mom, get the camera.
That's a long time.
Human
right?
beings
Another,
have been
it's
around
got-
that long, right?
And so the oldest,
Yes.
that most scientists will put modern humans is 1 million years. So that's plenty of 23,000 year
Here's an-
cycles, isn't it?
True.
And we might have been very advanced more than once.
Yeah.
Like the reality is, and this is, I'm just going to throw this out there. Like it could be that we have been as advanced as we are now 50,000 years ago, 100,000 years ago,
Totally
200,000 years ago.
Definitely.
Who the hell knows, right? Things have changed so much since then that any and all evidence of that could easily
There
be
could
wiped
have been
away.
a human
And
civilization before the dinosaurs.
We could go forward 20,000 years and maybe be starting that cycle over again and not know about us. And all that is now would be buried and gone, right?
Because of the nuclear war.
So
That's another episode.
my point in all of this is that we don't know. But anatomically, we have been modern humans for, the oldest is about 100,000 years. The earliest is about 25 to, I want to say around 25,000 years. But those estimates are totally off, I'm pretty sure, because there's cave drawings that are 50,000 years old throughout Europe, right, where we're pretty much anatomically correct. And so, yeah, I think personally we have been at least close to advanced, more than once.
Have you heard that theory that we were the meteor that killed the dinosaurs, and that the human race is actually aliens?
alien race.
Yeah. And that
Yeah.
we came
We're the
here and
aliens.
wiped out the Neanderthals because
Yeah.
we didn't wear.
I don't buy that. And the main reason I don't buy any alien stuff is because we've got some pretty good evidence for at least the killing off of the dinosaurs 65 million years ago, and or at least the killing off of the majority of them, right? The ones that survived evolved into birds, but the ones that died because of we do know 65 million years ago, a really, really large meteor struck off the coast in the peninsula of in Mexico, and that event, you can actually go everywhere in the world, dig to a specific layer to 65 million years ago, and you will find
the sperm.
you will find a layer of the residue of that explosion. And in fact, meteorites have specific elements in it that don't exist normally on Earth, and you will look for that element throughout, digging down and going back in history until you hit that 65 million year mark, and then you'll find them.
It's that element that Tony Stark created in Iron Man 2.
It's not that one.
It's
but
unobtainium.
One of the theories I've always liked that Dean was almost about to hit on is the aliens came down and there was only Neanderthals running around, and the aliens they wanted to get laid, and they hit the Neanderthals, and then that's how we were born.
Primary cause
Well,
for
Well,
interstellar exploration.
we forgot to bring chicks.
it does seem to be the case
Wait,
through.
you didn't bring? Oh shoot. Okay.
I thought you were going to bring the chicks.
I brought this blow up.
I brought the sandwiches, man.
there is evidence.
We need to reproduce. Someone go around and find some alien puss.
There is evidence that humans and Neanderthals procreated together.
Yes,
There
we
are.
did. I agree.
And not only that, but through mitochondrial DNA, they've pretty much determined that not
Hell, I
only did they
procreated with a Neanderthal just the other night.
there are modern humans with Neanderthal DNA
I actually know
in
one.
them right now.
The boyfriend to one of my friends.
yeah, I'm
has
sure he has some
Neanderthal.
Neanderthal.
Is that Liam?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No. I'm talking about Katie's boyfriend.
Oh.
I won't say last names here. Yeah. And he actually has the very defined brow and everything, so
Yeah.
it's like you can kind of see it.
Yeah.
Well, touching upon the point Dean was making about the possibility that human life originated from an extraterrestrial source, I think it's possible that maybe all life on Earth came from an
Yes.
extraterrestrial
Yes.
source long before
Yes.
the dinosaurs.
Yes, I totally agree with that. There's the whole there's a well-renowned theory called panspermia, and panspermia is the idea.
Is that what happens when Peter Pan gets happy?
What basically panspermia
though.
means is that life either evolved on a rock, or in space, or maybe in some place that blew up, and that bacteria can live frozen for a long time, as far as we can tell, forever. And so you can imagine life spawning in one spot, that spot getting blown up, and then those chunks and pieces carries pieces of life throughout. And when it lands someplace that is hospitable for life, it will then seed that place with life.
And even better,
Panspermia.
and even better, what if it's like, there's something deliberate about it? Like, what if we were as like an entire ecosystem?
So there's
kinda
some
like
planet out there with a giant potato gun shooting seeds. Planets.
No, I was thinking like a
You
bunch
get
of
one,
aliens.
you get one.
No, I was thinking like a bunch of aliens are going around trying to like catalog a bunch of shit, and then like they find this one kind of bacteria. They're like, and I want to try experiment, dudes. This is probably gonna take a while, but I want to use our tractor beam, like get some samples, put it on their plant. I just want to see what happens, man. It's gonna be crazy.
Wait, how does the tractor beam get a sample?
I don't know. Like you could lift off a bunch
Come
of
on, you
rocks
gotta-
or something like that.
Okay, all right. Yeah.
Honestly, I'm just trying to work in the whole alien aspect. Like, I want to keep
could've-
aliens in there. I want to be all like, just harvest them up, man.
Okay, going back to Rod's thing. Wait, Rod,
But we don't need them.
Going back to Rod's thing, the pan thing. Another one that I actually thought of myself. I'm sure somebody else thought of it before me. Is like some race on some planet many, many light years away. They send a representative to create life on another planet, but this representative is a lot like the Oogie Boogie Man on
From Nightmare Before Christmas.
from Nightmare Before Christmas, right?
So covered in burlap?
He's a suit or whatever with a collective intelligence, right? And when he gets to the planet that realizes this can support the life that we need, he undoes the thread, the whole suit opens up, and millions of little bugs go all over the place, creating life all over that planet.
Just to clarify, is this like? I'm just imagining like, is it like 3 aliens in a large overcoat or something like that? That's what I'm envisioning here. It's like
No,
hello, humans.
it's a million little different species of cells living inside this one thing, but they have a hive intelligence. They have a collective intelligence, and some of them are better at living under the ocean, and some of them are better at living way up at high altitudes in the snow. Some of them are better at living in the desert. And when he gets there, he looks around and says, "Oh, this is a good planet," and he undoes the thread, and everybody goes their own ways, and they find where they need to be.
So
wait.
in actuality,
Sorry,
in actuality,
non sequitur.
Life creates the planet.
Correct.
Actually, non sequitur here. On that subject, you ever see the Bugs Bunny Roadrunner movie? Like where it's Bugs Bunny talking about like humanity.
Yes, it was
and
a
evolution,
sad
shit like that?
interpretation of the earlier like 1950s cartoons.
No, it was a clip movie. There was a bunch of them.
Yeah,
But
it was
I remember,
bad.
I loved it. I grew up on that movie.
Okay,
Screw
it was
you.
good. It was good, but the only good stuff in it was the old stuff,
Okay, I love that
the
movie, so
redone
shut up.
stuff of the late 70s and early 80s was crap.
This was the first one though, and it was still really good. Okay, this was before it got all like weird and choppy. But in any event, there's this one bit at the opening where Bugs Bunny is talking about the evolution of man and stuff like that, and he just shows like this one caveman like walking over a ridge, like with a little club in his hand. He looks around, looks left, he looks right. He's like, "I'll take it," and then he just like walks off screen. We hear a clonk, and apparently he just got himself a wife, and he carries her to a cave, and they start a family, and they start watching the walls like they're watching TV. I love that shit. And I'm just imagining that, and it's like, what if we had like weirdly kind of simple origins where it's just like one alien kind of just like, kind of what Daniel said, just came to Earth, and he was like, this is okay.
Just a cosmic loogie.
No, he's just like, it's an okay planet, I guess. You know what? Let's out of here for a while.
I saw this cartoon the other day. It's called. Oh my god, I'm not gonna remember. Okay, but anyway,
Green eggs and ham.
this giant alien probably stands, 30 stories tall or more, lands on the planet, and almost like what I mentioned earlier, he's just horny, and he's looking around, and he sees this little crack in the Earth's crust that's got like steam coming out of it, and he's like, "Oh, that's what I'm looking for." And he starts fucking it, and it starts making mountains and stuff everywhere while he's doing it, and making volcanoes, and then he goes, "Oh!" And then like the whole planet is just like built, and he goes, "Oh, I needed that," and he gets back in his ship and flies away.
Now
I think
that's an,
that's
now that's an origin story worth
So
telling.
we are the result of a cosmic orgasm.
Well, I'm sure we're that. Any way you look at it, it's got to be that.
Where else could we have possibly come from?
So
Well,
Come being the operative
if we
word.
if we did come from an alien species,
Come.
as Rob's version, of course.
No, Rob is anti-alien.
I'm not.
Oh, I mean,
I don't propone an alien.
Oh, never mind.
You
Not your
xenophobe.
version then.
No.
Not your version.
No.
But or like.
I am for panspermia in terms of I can conceive that life started elsewhere and that something seeded it here, right? But I don't need that
That
because
sounds like a really interesting omelet.
if you look at how what happened to the Earth, the story of the Earth is a fascinating story, right? And I'll summarize it real quick here. 4.5 billion years ago, cooled enough so that it was just this big molten thing, right? Got hit by another planet about the size of Mars, off kilter, right? Knocked off a huge chunk of it, went into space, huge amount of debris, formed the moon. This is about 4 billion years ago. The moon started out right next to the Earth so that it went around 3 times in a day and took up the entire field of vision. It was massive because it was right near us. And it caused huge amounts of the water that had been collecting already became 300-foot tidal waves every day, all the way around the Earth every day, right? And under these really horrible conditions, right, there were these pools with all this stuff in it, including carbon, all the stuff you need for life. And with that washing and rewashing and rewashing, life started. And all it takes is for one little cell,
Yep.
right? All it
One
takes is
single-celled organism.
one replicator to begin replicating. And once the replicator starts replicating, it replicates using everything that's there and continues to do so and evolves, right?
It's the zone
And once it starts, it's done. You just need it to happen once in one pool, and all you need is to have food around, a whole planet worth. Great, fantastic, right? In no time at all, you've got planet on the entire thing.
Well, I mean, like the fact that we're here, human beings,
Yeah.
has been nothing but luck, because back when it was all aquatic life, the little tiny thing that we evolved for was
Yes.
literally the weakest thing in the ocean, with all these giant monsters with tentacles walking around. The thing we had was hiding and burrowing.
Yeah.
And once we got out, we were like, oh, great, now mammals can start. And then we
We are the result of several thousand generations of pussies.
I'm good
exactly
at hiding and
because
burrowing.
burrowing mammals are the reason we survived the
Think of
meteorite.
Sneak up on that stuff in the middle of the night.
You can expand that. You can expand it. You can think of it as you are the expression of 4 billion years of survival, and that is powerful.
Okay, now
being cowards.
we've been talking about survival in life, but this podcast is about ancient civilization.
I did want to bring up, segueing from Murad's point about the connection between ancient civilizations and astronomy. We've got to discuss the widely speculated connection between said civilizations and extraterrestrials. Because in the case of the Aztecs and the Egyptians, at the very least, you've got, like in the form of hieroglyphs, you've got spaceships and you've got beings from another world coming down and assisting the peoples.
That's true. I was watching one on YouTube the other day, and it was like this guy was talking about all these interpretations of this one hieroglyph they found in, I don't know, a pyramid or whatnot. And there was all these different explanations for it. And then he said, well, wait a minute, man. They aren't sure if this wall was sitting this way when they cut this hieroglyphic. And he turned it 90 degrees to the left. And it's like, oh, look, it's just like the spires that exist in Moroccan buildings and all these other temples and stuff around the world. And if you look at it now, the shape in the middle is a guy sitting on a chair, but he's like almost lying on his back facing the top of the spire, and his hands are like touching some kind of controls and stuff.
Yeah,
And
I've
it's like,
seen that,
Whoa,
yeah.
it's a spaceship. It's a dude in a spaceship. Come on, you guys. It's like, and when you looked at it, it made so much more sense than all the other explanations that had been made.
So I would argue that it's possible, but I find it more likely that some of those advanced human civilizations that I believe existed might have been around long enough to influence those early folks, and they would have looked like aliens or had a cargo cult effect on them, because whenever a more advanced civilization meets a less advanced civilization, it's a cargo cult situation where the less advanced civilization misunderstands what they're seeing and begin to worship planes or whatever.
Not to mention just our innate ability to tell stories.
Yeah.
Right.
And
we
create
are
things.
meaning-making machines. We love myths.
I mean, a lot of people forget that while the pyramids were being built, woolly mammoths still existed. So it is a lot
Yep.
further than we like to think about, because, like you said,
Right.
humans have a really weird perspective of time.
Right. We don't
Back
understand.
to the pyramids. The Mayan pyramids and the Egyptian pyramids have this one really cool thing in common. And it is
They're triangles.
no. Well, yeah, okay, triangles in general. But at some point below the main door where you would enter and going all the way up to the top, totally had to be thought about and engineered before they put it together. There will be a shaft that is only I don't know, half a meter. I can't remember the exact measurement, but like a foot to 3 feet tall and wide, right? Had to be thought about while they were cutting the big giant stones, because it's less than a meter, right? And it'll go across and it will go up, and there are perfectly linked doors into it that they found would be like entirely waterproof, except for there's always a little bit of a thing in the bottom, and there's a little handle on the doors. But think about it, it's like a foot or two. Okay, so no person is crawling through these things. So why is there a freaking door in it? What was going through these little chasms? And one of the theories there is also that they made the Great Pyramids in Giza, the first ones. Yeah, sure, they ended up putting kings and queens in them and their treasures and all that. But the real deal was about the floods that we talked about at the beginning of this thing, they wanted to put a lot of food in a place that was not going to be affected by the water.
Actually, I think I brought this up in a past podcast, but the the Egyptians were the ones to create the first refrigeration system by
Oh
building
yeah, you told us
a
about
system where that the sun doesn't hit it in a way that it cools everything down inside of it. So they did want to store a lot of food in
And they
certain
need a
places.
giant refrigerator that would help keep their food. Now, here's the other part of that. How did they make, including the Mayan pyramids, Gyoza Egyptian pyramids, and even more so, a lot of people don't know about this one, that the Baalbek Enigma is these stones were somehow, as big and heavy as they were cut so perfectly that they fit together before they had grout and things. They just fit together and were like waterproof. Water didn't get in. Okay.
So they're good at Tetris. What about it?
Speaking of the Tetris part, all three of those, Baalbek, Gyoza in Egypt, and Mayan pyramids, if you look at the wall structure closely, where Tetris-wise, where they fit together in different patterns, all three of those follow the same pattern. 3 different parts of the world. They all follow the same pattern where they crisscross and reconnect here and there. They all follow the same pattern.
I
Could
think
just
it's
be that
geometry.
It's a really common building method that's really good for building large.
Yeah, and they all figured it out around the
Self-supporting
same time, and
Yeah.
they all
Yeah.
figured out the exact same way that they were going to do it.
Yeah, it's all about the fulcrum. Give me the right fulcrum, I can move anything.
Okay, now add to that various parts. Where am I thinking about? I'm thinking about Peru, where all the lines were and stuff. Where you have to get in a plane and go, so far above the earth, and you look down and you see like the giant spider drawn in the ground, and you see the giant bird and all that. And it's like this is a time when like supposedly nobody could fly, but for some reason these things are etched into the ground, and they're acres and acres of space. Okay, if you look at a lot of the documentaries about this while they were flying around, there's these long lines of stuff where the land was just leveled perfectly, like somewhere where you're gonna build an airport.
So you think that people terraformed the area so they could,
I don't think people did it.
or
I just imagine that, like in an ancient civilization, like in Peru, there was just like a Jerry Seinfeld as stand-up
Although-
comedian who was still telling people about how airline food. Was
there
so
is an
stupid.
idea of how people could have done it. Is they basically made, especially when you're talking about cutting the stones, they basically made some kind of huge water pick, right? Like what you would clean your teeth with. They made a nozzle that
Is that on your list?
Ah, you got me. First point of the day. The water pick that cuts stone.
Well, I think it is
you'd use a laser
reasonable to assume that there may well have been methods of stone cutting and transportation and architecture that were simply lost to time. For instance, take Greek fire, the combustible substance that was used by the Byzantines in naval battles.
Oh yeah, they like
yeah.
had the pump and they just like shot it everywhere.
Yeah,
But that was
we
a
know it
gift from the
existed,
gods,
but
Blake.
we know it existed, but we don't know what it was made of.
Yeah, the Romans also had cement that could set underwater.
that's right.
We didn't
Also-
have that until like, I don't know, 10 years ago.
And
or
it
some
doesn't
shit.
help that they thank the gods for everything and make up stories of the gods handing
Right.
them these gifts.
Right.
They weren't a bunch of big fat liars.
Like Greek fire was a gift from the god of crafting. It starts with an H. I forgot his name.
Hephaestus?
No,
Helios?
the one that was that's not allowed on Olympus until the winter solstice when they have the big god meetings because
Blah, blah, blah.
when he was
Hephaestus?
born he was ugly. Yeah, you said it.
I said it like 3 times,
Oh,
and you were ignoring me.
Sorry, but you said it louder the third time.
Hephaestus.
Yeah, him. Yeah, the Greek fire was a gift from him, and that's how they explain having it.
Right.
Maybe they don't want the secret to leak out to their enemies or something, but
Actually, there are
Maybe.
like different myths for fire. Like Prometheus was a big one, and there was a whole thing
Prometheus
where
was for giving us fire, like normal fire, but
Yeah.
not Greek fire.
Yeah, Greek fire was like napalm.
Right.
yeah.
Yeah,
I
so
like to
they're-
think
they're-
that it was just like a very complex misinterpretation. Like, what if instead of literally giving humans fire, maybe Prometheus just allowed us to borrow his Wu-Tang album and we just never gave it back? He's just giving it to like some Greek king, and he's like, "Hey man, this shit fire." And he's like, "We will treasure it always." And it's like, yeah, whatever, dude. Just give it back to me whenever.
A lot of secrets from past civilizations are not available to us, mostly because of us. Like, I've
It's
read
the Koch brothers.
I've read and watched somewhere that back in the 1920s, Egyptian stylings was very popular. So what people did was go to the pyramids and just take a whole bunch of stuff. They weren't archaeologists. They weren't that. They just wanted this
They were
to
just
put in
greedy
their own.
assholes.
They were just
And,
That's a
grave
nice
robbers.
mummy. It would look nice.
Exactly.
sitting
Yeah.
room.
They were. They took so much stuff that sooner or later, like years later, when we actually started looking at this stuff for, like, to learn about the past, all they had was King Tut's tomb. Why did they only have King Tut's tomb? Because King Tut was one of the worst emperors of in Egyptian history,
Nobody
and nobody
wanted
wanted
his
his
shit?
stuff. Exactly, because he didn't have a great burial thing like everyone else. He had like an okay one.
Yeah.
So it's our fault that we do not know a lot of stuff about the past because we
Huge slave guy King Tut was,
Yeah, he was.
Mostly
his
white
tomb was
slaves too.
Hey man, let's not take this to a racial place.
Well,
Okay.
in the
just interesting.
in the old world, the slaves had slaves. So I mean, it was crazy time.
What do you do when you're the slave of a slave?
Yes,
Dude,
Master,
it's
I'll
the-
do that.
It's the
Hey,
worst
you.
of the worst. It's the worst
He
of the worst.
did to King.
It just
kill a
keeps
king's
rolling
dad.
downhill, right?
Well, I guess if you're a hierarchical slave, right, you're in a good spot where you're a communicator and
It's a good time to be a
consort and whatever.
slave if you
Yeah.
got a slave, I suppose.
Whereas the slave of the slave is like you look at
It's
your
the worst of the
slave and
worst.
you say, "Hey, dude, go clean out the chamber pots and stuff. I gotta
totally.
go deal with this
Totally.
chick's wardrobe over here."
Yeah.
You have the slaves carrying the king or emperor, and then you have under that the other
Yeah.
slaves carrying
Carrying the
Absolutely.
slaves.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely.
No. Even better, considering that the slaves carrying the king have to walk. What if the slaves under them have to like just have a bunch of platforms that they just rotate on, like so that they can keep them walking too? So like they have to walk double
No, they have to
time.
run ahead and clean the road and get all the poop and stuff.
Like
off
they
of
have
it.
to take little brushes and like clean it out, and there's like a flower petal thrower. It's like, behold the slaves carrying the king, and the slaves carrying the king are like, behold the king. And he's like, yeah, I'm here. What's up?
Yeah, but it's true. We've lost. I mean, I think we've lost most history to the water. But not only that, like there
Asshole
were
humans.
asshole
Yeah.
humans. Like
Yeah, like the library of
Alexandria.
Alexandria.
Oh my
Yeah.
God! Don't get me started
Yeah,
with that.
where-
I am so pissed
like
off.
a lot
about
of
that.
a lot
good
of the
stuff
answers
lost.
to a lot of the things we're discussing today
We're there.
were there.
Think of the
we could
Wu-Tang
have
albums.
known. We could have known the history of so many different civilizations.
We would have hit the Enlightenment at least a couple thousand years earlier if we still had that library.
And I hate to say it, but even to this day, there are still temples and places that are being destroyed as we speak.
Yeah.
Which is a real shame. You know, we gotta try to preserve the ancient sites.
Yeah.
But swinging back around to the overall conversation, I still want to argue that there were we had advanced civilizations. I don't believe there were aliens per se. I'm not going to say there weren't aliens, but I just feel like if aliens ever were to come and see us, they would like either kill us off and take over, or I don't know.
Even if they were the aliens that started us and they come back
I
and they're
just
like,
don't-
"This is what you guys did."
I don't see.
This is what you did.
I don't see an alien confrontation being anything but really, really bad for us. And the fact that we're still here makes me think that didn't happen.
Actually, here's my idea. This
Well,
might
maybe they
sound-
went through some bad times and so they couldn't come back.
Maybe.
Maybe
but
somehow
what
we
if-
did better
wait,
than they did.
hold on,
They're
wait,
doing
wait.
even worse
I'm
than we
sorry.
are.
Maybe.
Wait,
Yeah.
wait, here's my idea. This might sound a little bit like out there, but here's my thing. What if the aliens were just kind of like exploring and kind of like trying to come up with a bunch of other planets to discover? And they've already got like a huge empire where it's like they've already got like all the shit they need. They've got great resources. They've got a huge population.
all full.
No. My idea is that they come here, they just look at everything and they're like, seem better. Or even better, what if like early humans like Neanderthals just look at them and they're like, who are these assholes? They look stupid, and they got offended and just left. It's like they look like little garden gnomes or something like that. They're tiny. They've got big eyes. Who are these? And it's like,
I don't know. I have an idea. Of,
Any with wings?
Of aliens is that these aliens are really lazy, and so what they do is
like Paul.
is
We want to contraform this planet.
yeah, make the building blocks for life. So we make all the buildings and stuff for them. So when they come here, they're all like, okay, great. Now let's kill you guys all.
Right.
So they're just waiting until we get advanced enough that we don't need as many resources.
We're
and
just
that
the builders,
We're
yeah.
a lot
We're
more
just like the-
technologically advanced, and they just take over from there.
We
We're
are a
doing-
race of doozers.
We're the evolutionary equivalent. We're the evolutionary equivalent of like those interns who do everything, and then like the actual like higher ups take the credit and then fire them.
Yeah.
Exactly.
We're interns, man. We're like the expendable workforce.
So the main reason I hesitate with any of those sorts of ideas is that the distance between stars is fantastic, like really, really massive. And so the amount of technology that you'd have to get to us from anywhere is way ahead of us, like thousands of years.
Ridiculously astounding.
And so, as a result, anybody who were to ever visit us is going to be so far ahead technologically. We're like ants to them.
And then
We're not even gonna
could
show up on the
be-
radar.
It could be millions and millions of years before they could return.
Exactly. They're all like, oh, by the time we get there, they should be pretty good, and then we can terraform and take their stuff.
Oh wait, even better. Remember that theory I said earlier, where they
So
kinda,
we're a
like, just
fueling
drop-
station.
Exactly.
But the main reason we don't need aliens to know where we came from is because we share in our DNA. If you look at human DNA and compare it to the DNA of bonobos and chimps, you will find that we are bonobos and chimps are related to each other at about 8 to 9% similarity. We have about 3% similarities to bonobos and about 4% similarities to chimps, meaning we are closer to bonobos and to chimps than they are to each other, right? So, evolutionarily speaking, we broke off, so did bonobos, so did chimps, and we are the next closest relative is actually bonobos.
There was a lot of
left
Neanderthals
the
that were
band.
not picky about which furries they were hitting.
So from a purely evolutionary and DNA science perspective, right? We don't need anything other than looking at it and going, "Oh, this is where we broke off. Those are our cousins."
Let's go science.
Yeah, but do you remember that theory I said earlier, where it's like, what if the aliens just like kind of on a hunch like left some bacteria on Earth and we're like, we'll come back for it later. What if like they came back and they were like, hey man, remember that bacteria we left on that shitty planet? It's like, yeah man, what will happen? They just come back and they're like, what the shit?
Yeah, totally.
Dude, this is like when you left your mug with all your flim flam, because that's what we aliens eat, and then like it got all moldy and it turned into a giant alien civilization. Yeah, dude, this keeps happening to us. Why do we do this to ourselves?
Then they'll enact a solar flare and wipe us all out.
Yeah, dude, we got to get rid of this. Like, my boss is gonna be all like, dude, you gotta clean up your workspace.
Yep, and then they'll just ignite the sun, and that'll be that.
Yeah, dude, just
Well,
give me a second. I'll set up a
wait,
solar
wait,
flare. You get the bleach. I'll get the paper towels, and
They'll
we'll
just
set up
wipe
a
us
solar flare.
clean.
When we run into aliens, that's when racism will truly disappear. Because we will have
Speciesism
a new...
will arise.
Yeah, xenophobia will arise, and we will be together as a planet to try to stop them.
That's right.
So
I don't know. I think we'll still find reasons to tear each other apart. It's just
I don't
the
think
human
so.
condition.
I don't think
And
The
then
number-
we eat each other.
the number one thing that brings
Waiting
people
for that.
together is
Back
a common
again,
enemy.
Jesus Christ, Daniel.
A common enemy is the number one thing to bring people together, and
Dean,
I
I
think
think you're just describing the ending of Watchmen, like the comic. Remember the giant squid monster, and everyone's like, "Oh shit, they're squid monsters. We gotta team up against these guys."
But if there's a
yeah, exactly,
disagreement,
And look at that big one's carrying a book and it says to serve man.
but there could.
They're gonna give us food, dude.
There could be
Let's go on their ship. It's gonna be okay.
The giant naked blue man isn't helping us. We have to help ourselves.
there could be a disagreement amongst humans as to how to respond to the aliens. Like, one faction may advocate diplomacy, another would want to nuke them straight away. And
And then there's the guys in
America.
West Virginia, and they're all like, they look like garden gnomes. We don't want no garden gnomes and friggin', I don't know, mythological creatures.
Well, it will start as like
Fairies.
countries, like, oh yeah, we're right, and then they're right, and then they'll be all okay with each other. But once we find out a way to like, not universally, but planetarily,
Planetarily.
agree. Thank you. Agree, then we will all like be chill with each other. That's a really laid back way of saying that, but yeah.
The Earth Alliance.
Exactly, the alliance, like in Mass Effect.
The Earth Alliance against the aliens.
All right, I want to go back to one other thing. No, I was talking about like cutting the stones and putting them together and making them waterproof and all that. We were talking about Mayans and the Baalbeks and the Egyptians. All right, even the Easter Island statues and Stonehenge and all this. How did they move these giant stones and statues that weighed?
Manpower.
Slaves.
Manpower.
Tractor
with their
beam.
minds.
Manpower and geometry.
Okay, how would they use the
Alien
geometry?
tractor beams, dude.
All you need is a good fulcrum
I'm not
and
gonna
a
let go
lever.
of that.
Oh, okay,
If
wait.
you've got a
We're
lever
going
on the right
up and up and
fulcrum,
up and around and about.
You've
So
got a
we're just gonna
lever
keep
and a
moving
fulcrum.
The fulcrum. We're gonna just keep moving the fulcrum.
You got a lever, you got a fulcrum, and you got like 1,000 souls.
So
at
there's
your
no
disposal.
conveyor belt kind of rolling thing going on.
You
here.
just need muscle, backbone,
Because there's a-
somebody to coordinate, some rope, maybe some wood, and I can move any stone
And
you
a
want
tractor
anywhere
beam.
you want.
And
Yeah.
they have been proving that. I have seen.
It is absolutely the case.
I've seen people proving that.
People,
Yeah,
all it
unbridled,
takes
man.
is
The other
people
theory was-
and a little geometric science.
Yeah,
there's
manpower can accomplish
There's another
a lot.
theory that
Okay.
wherever you could make an aqueduct, you could make basically a water-powered conveyor belt.
Yes.
There wouldn't be a belt on it, but you'd have a bunch of things that could
Yep.
roll, and the water would push your rollers, which wouldn't be a ball, it'd be a cylinder, and you put whatever you want to move on that, and the water that you're letting out of your aqueduct, which would go back around to the aqueduct, as the Romans were able to do, would just keep pushing it along. Now, the problem I
you
have
don't
with
even-
that though is for some of the big stuff that was moved, say like with the pyramids or whatever, it's saying that they had the water, and I'm going to say that they did.
They did.
Because it was a long time ago. Yeah, they had the water. How big would that freaking roundabout of water thing have to be?
Okay,
It'd
so
be bigger than the pyramid itself.
here's the thing.
And it makes breakfast for you.
Here's the thing. Here's the thing. You can have a canoe, right? And if you make a canoe large enough, you can put a 10-ton rock in your canoe, and your canoe will not sink.
This is true.
That canoe then can have 10 guys with rows, and they will row your 10-ton block
Right. So you can
10
conceivably
miles upriver against the current
So
if
could
you want it,
conceivably
right?
make aqueducts that, as long as you had the water to do
You don't
it,
even need
you
the
could
aqueducts.
move.
You don't even need the aqueducts. And in the olden days when they were making
Well,
the
if you wanted
pyramids,
to go to a certain place and that river doesn't go where you want it to go, you got to make something.
and in fact they did. I mean, what they're finding now is that the ancient Egyptians used the I'm forgetting the name of the canal.
The Nile?
Cleopatra's
Nile.
Canal. Oh, okay.
The Nile. They used the Nile
Cleopatra's-
like
it wasn't really water.
like really amazingly, right? They used it to irrigate huge swaths of their lands, and because it's a seasonal thing, right? It goes up during certain seasons, goes back down during other seasons, right? They could plan exactly when and how to plant all their plants, and it was like clockwork, right? And they built all these canals that fed all of their plantations, and they knew exactly when it was going to be coming and going, and they used that to move their huge rocks to get out and build their huge pyramids because they had a full system that was already there, sitting there, working every year. They could watch it come in, it goes out. Okay, we see how this works. Build, trenches out to wherever you need the water. It comes in the next year. Boom! Look at that, fills it up. Perfect, right? It was all naturally built in, ready to go.
Pardon my chuckle. I just remembered, totally off the deal here, in the 7th grade, and I got an A on this bullshit. For my science project, I did a theory thing that these guys made the pyramids and stuff with like a giant Play-Doh factory. Nice. And the stones weren't hard when they moved them. It was like this soft stuff. And they went and made a stone in their Play-Doh factory.
We made pyramid goo.
Yes.
I like it.
They made their own Play-Doh. They just like mixed water and sand and clay together.
It's not that crazy of an idea, especially for a young kid. That's actually not that crazy an idea. I think it's a pretty smart idea, man. I mean, back then, they used to make super strong sandals. They made all kinds of crazy things.
I just imagine in like the Great Exodus, like Moses parts a Red Sea of like blue Play-Doh. It's like
wouldn't it
like
be red
Gumby's
Play-Doh?
across. No. It's like because it's meant to be water. It's not literally a Red Sea,
I don't know. You weren't there
Very true.
but the Red Sea is still there, and it's not red.
Anymore.
Oh, zing! That's because of the ancient tampon.
It was Cleopatra's Canal that turned it red.
Cleopatra's it hit menopause.
Actually, reading up on the Great Pyramids, I learned something I didn't know. Apparently, at least this is what people currently suspect. No longer is it believed that slaves constructed the pyramids, but that instead it was a team of several thousand skilled laborers who were paid for their work, working in shifts.
plus
Yeah.
slaves.
They actually found them buried near the pyramids themselves.
Yeah. I think I read the same
That's
thing.
just the media, man.
Wouldn't
It was the media that convinced us that it was slaves who were used to.
but
build
there were
it.
like entire towns of slaves. Why would they have that many slaves if they weren't building things?
Well, they needed a team of people to, provide food for the laborers and provide for their
Going
needs
back
too.
to the theory,
Again,
where it's
slaves
like
of
the
slaves.
slaves, yeah.
Slaves of slaves, people. Yep, and super
But
strong
aren't we
sandals.
all-
You're not a slave if you're getting paid.
Aren't we all just slaves of slaves of slaves of slaves of slaves of slaves?
Yes.
It might be that you can still get paid and be a slave. The mark of a slave
No,
is
you
not.
can't.
That's not true.
You-
You can
you
be paid
can,
and be
yeah.
a slave. What makes you
Yeah,
a slave is
sharecropping.
not whether or not you get paid. What makes you a slave is whether or not you are owned and whether or not you have your own set of rights.
everyone
If
in
you don't
Egypt
have
was
those things,
owned.
you can get paid but still be a slave. And in fact,
suppose.
people say that people in jail, right, are modern day slaves because they get paid, but they don't have their freedom. They can't do their own thing. Therefore, i.e. and ergo, they're slaves.
Yeah, there's
and when
compulsory
the
labor.
and when the state makes you work, that's compulsory labor. You still get paid, but you are a slave. Welcome to modern day slavery.
Yep. We've put a happy face on slavery.
Yeah,
It's more enjoyable for everybody.
exactly.
Go watch 13.
It's okay,
They
they
go
did
way
something
further
bad.
in depth into this than we can.
So, anybody know about the Long U Caves? I didn't know about those before Daniel brought them up, and I found
that's
them
a
really
weird one,
interesting. Yeah, I had never heard of them.
Because they're how old?
Really old, like
Yeah. Really old.
over 2,000.
And they're caves.
Like 2,500.
They're caves that look like they were really thought out, like built from the ground up. But no, they were dug, and how much of it looks like it was done by water and or geological stuff, and how much of it looks like no people did this, and it's huge. It's giant.
Have they got a team of spelunkers to go and check it out?
Spelunkers.
The thing is,
You don't need a team of spelunker. You can just walk. Actually, there are long, narrow areas in it that you would want to be a team of spelunkers.
Right, I
that
think-
you would
I
split
think,
into different areas.
I think a team would be. I mean, safety in numbers, number one, and also like if you have more eyes, the more you'll see. So I think a team of.
I do have
spelunkers
condoms
will
that
work.
say spelunker on the side.
Nice.
Does it have a little hard hat with like a little light?
Oh, the hat doesn't need to be hard. I take care of that myself.
No, I mean, does it have a little headlamp? Is it like?
Yeah, it's got
Is
a
that
lamp and a camera.
Camera?
Well, you know, I'm not
Didn't
gonna.
know you were into that
I'm not
sort
gonna
of
take
thing.
my eyeball out of my skull and put it in front.
Ejaculation.
Wait, the Long U Caves. Listeners out there, look it up. I found documentaries and
ejaculation?
stuff. The Long U Caves. It's kooky, man. It's like,
Yeah, it's
who
crazy.
did this?
Yeah, there are no historical records of its construction, and it wasn't discovered until the 90s.
Right.
So it's crazy.
It's in China somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's virtually nothing is
And-
known
and-
about
and it
who
looks
built
like-
it or why, what for.
And it looks like something you would find in the Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
It's like the dwarves built their kingdom in this place. It's huge.
Yeah, and there's a bunch of them.
Yeah.
Probably aliens.
If people don't know what it's for, it's holding an
Dinosaurs.
ancient evil, and we should not mess
They
with it.
figured that like tens of thousands of people could have lived there, and they have areas to store food and in a way that would be like, oh, this is a silo and this is a meat area and this, you know, and
This for your meat.
no, even areas where they thought were like this area was made just to grow fungus that you can eat.
Isn't there a New Mexico Indian, like in
Very
the-
descriptive.
Yeah,
New Mexico Indian thing that
that's like deserted and in the mountains that
Oh,
was totally
yeah.
carved into, and it's,
Yeah.
nobody knows anything about
Oh,
it.
you
It's
mean,
like,
he's right.
and
What's
it's like
it called?
1,500 years old.
Newspaper rock?
And by Indian, I would have to add, if I'm right, Rod, you can correct me.
Would it be Navajo?
We're not
Navajo,
talking.
I think. Well, they were
Okay.
three
New Mexico,
Navajos.
it's
They
probably
were
But,
like-
but there's things in there that are not from the indigenous
Right.
American continent. There's things in there that, like, wait a minute, this is some kind of Tibetan Buddhist origin, and it's in New Mexico, and it's in the ground from thousands and thousands of years ago. What? Explain that. They found Egyptian relics, from 2,000 years ago stuff in the Grand Canyon. In Mexico, underneath Mayan temples, they found statues of Osiris and Isis.
That's interesting.
At least that's what they're claiming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
Okay?
it.
I don't have that proof in front of me.
I think it makes sense.
I did read that.
Because we know now that Columbus was far from the first European to stumble upon the New World. We know the Vikings were in Newfoundland.
There was a bridge way, way, way before that. And like Rod's theory earlier is like, how many times around have we gone? How many times have, we could have been splitting up those different civilizations around the world many times before our recollection and anything that we've got recorded.
And given how powerful and prosperous Egypt was for so long, it's I think it's perfectly reasonable to assume that they could have mounted a transatlantic expedition.
Absolutely.
I think you could say this about most history, and you could argue like the music industry, among other things. It really hasn't been discovered and subsequently ruined until white people get involved. Don't act like that doesn't happen.
you said you didn't want to bring race
Don't
in.
say involved until white people came into power.
I would just
Pardon
say
my racist remark from earlier, but I do have to bring that up once in a while. There were white slaves before there were blacks.
I would argue.
In fact, the term slave comes from the term Slav because Southeastern Europeans were often
Right.
used as slaves.
They were
So-
slaves for the North Africans, and so that 400-year thing, there was a couple thousand years of the other way around.
So there's a great book by a guy named Jared Diamond called Guns, Germs, and Steel, and it goes to
Love
try
it.
to
Read it.
answer like how different cultures evolved over time. And one of the things he discusses in that book is that in the Americas, when humans first arrived 12 to 14,000 years ago, most of the mammals were very large mammals, right? There were giant everything out here. And they had never seen humans, unlike the mammals in, say, Africa, which had evolved with humans for millions of years.
Where you had Chewbacca, I mean, not Chewbacca, what's that guy's name? Chewbacca. Well, what was that guy's name? He goes, Uganza Yini Poo. they called him Chewy or something like that. It was
What
a
are you
sea
talking
thing.
about?
I'm talking about the Land of the Lost and the Sleestack.
I've never seen the Land of the Lost. I'm lost here.
Oh, you got to go back.
So-
We're talking the 70s there. But
So in in Africa, right, when you approach any mammal, it already instinctively knows about humans and will just bolt, right? Whereas in Americas, these animals had never seen humans, didn't know how to react to humans, and so humans could just walk up to them. So that made for really easy
Hunting.
food, right?
bestiality.
And we made it all the way to South
hello,
America.
beaver.
They didn't bring enough women over the land bridge.
We ended up going all the way to South America, and lo and behold, by the time we got there, no large mammals were left on the continent. So it's not
That's why you
definitive
got so many
proof,
weird people in
but,
the South, man, because
you know.
they hit Louisiana first, and they went like, "Oh, you know, what can I do when
and the same thing is true. Like when the very
I'm
first
get it on
humans
with this alligator?"
went to like Patagonia or any number of different islands where no humans had been seen before, the animals there would not retreat from you. You can just walk up to them. And so, on this planet, when animals aren't accustomed to something, they won't run away from it because they won't know they need to run away from it.
And turtle soup was
until-
invented
and- actually, yeah, we did wipe out all the turtles on that island.
really quick.
Yep.
Really quick.
And
you can
again,
eat
just
this.
further proof of every time humans
chicken.
land somewhere, we tend to just wipe things out. We just use resources until they're gone. In fact, coming back around to the Easter Island, the really sad part about Easter Island is that for whatever reason these guys decided they needed to build these heads, they built these heads to the point where they cut down the last of their trees and destroyed utterly
And
their
they were
civilization.
full statues. They were full statues.
These statues were created at the cost of their civilization.
Yeah, they destroyed themselves
in order to save the.
And I
in
say-
order
It
to
is
build these.
ironic.
I
things.
say they destroyed themselves because they were trying to get the aliens that visited them to come back because they were worried about their agriculture. They were worried about being able to grow stuff and everything, and they were having troubles.
And they were
it's like,
destroying their own environment.
and all the pussies
The
had to
irony.
do was be like the rest of the islands and get on your canoes and go to another island, and
Really,
But
they,
they
just had
didn't.
to stop cutting down trees. That's
Yeah.
all they had to do.
Yeah, right.
And in fact,
like-
fun.
And then if you
It's
look
like
at Japan,
staying up late at night and texting your ex, just being all like, "Babe, come back," or something like that, and you realize you didn't get enough sleep, or something like that. That's what it's like, except in civilization form.
that's right.
We wanted
Maybe
the
the
space people to
mystery.
come back so bad that we
And so you
destroyed
could-
the
Come
only
back. We
thing
want
that
your
we had to
green-
eat.
So,
We
so
want your
you
green
could-
skin and your big eye.
Ultimately, I think almost every crazy thing that has ever happened or bad thing that has ever happened to a human culture has happened because of some messed up belief, some idea or some belief that just was not true, like cannibalism. Every single place where cannibalism occurs, it's because they have some messed up belief that they
theme
think
of the list.
they're going to get the power of the thing that they're eating.
Yeah, there are religious
every
underpinnings.
every single instance that I have looked at, every single time that somebody does something that I would consider messed up, they're doing it because of some religious or
Even
crazy belief.
Early history, Native Americans try to steer away from this fact, but they say like, "Oh, we used every part of the animal and all that," and that's because they thought like, "Oh, if I eat every part of the badger, I got these positive things of the badger. If I eat every part of the buffalo, I got these positive traits of the buffalo." They thought like, "Oh, if I eat you, I get what you can do
Right.
in your soul."
This was mostly the northern Indians and the belief of Wendigos. And that's what
You
a
mean
Wendigo.
Wendigo.
Okay, whoa,
Wendigos,
explain Wendigo.
Wendigos.
Your version versus mine. Let's hear it.
Northern. I'm pretty sure the northern Indians are the ones that believe
You're
that
right, yeah.
Wendigos were the ones that
Around New
ate-
York and Quebec and all that, yeah.
Are the ones that believe that when you eat someone and you keep eating people, sooner or later you will become a Wendigo because you have consumed the essence of so many people, and from this you.
So you became like a spiritual skeletal Yoda.
in a
That's
way,
the way
but-
I know it. It's like
Eat
you became-
human flesh, I
but
must.
this
Well,
makes
you became almost immortal. Like as your human body died, you would still kind of come back as a Wendigo, and you would have all
Yes.
the knowledge and skills.
Sounds like
of
a
all
lich.
The
these
thing is,
An
people in
undead
this-
lich.
It's not
exactly.
It's not enough. You
Yeah.
always crave more. That's what. You
Yeah,
always
once
That
you
does sound
started,
like a
it
lich.
doesn't stop. That's true, and that was part of it. Once you started, it doesn't. So when you come back as a Wendigo, and that's why this was also used as a little story to scare the children
Right,
into
it's the
being good
boogeyman.
kids and stuff. Is like, oh, the Wendigo will get you, or the boogeyman, or whatever. But because the Wendigo would not stop. Once the Wendigo came back, you've already done all this stuff to become a Wendigo, and you died, and you came back, and you're Wendigo, and they supposedly. I think I'm thinking of. I don't want to say Hopi. I'm thinking northern New York Indians. I can't remember which ones, but they had kind of this weird bird
Mannahatta?
skull.
Mohicans.
Maybe they had this like a bird
Wasn't the
skull.
Mannahatta?
But the Wendigos.
There's a dance they could
The
do to get
downside
rid
of it was when you came back, the hunger didn't stop. It didn't give you more after that, though. But the hunger did not end.
Right.
There's a ritual dance that they could do that would get
They
rid
got
of the Wendigo.
tells them, man.
I remember seeing this on Supernatural or some other TV show.
They call it crunking.
But there's a dance because a lot of times the Native Americans communicated through dance.
Supernatural gets like things, like they do their research, right?
He's right.
Their first couple of seasons, or yeah.
And then they started making shit up.
I'm not an expert on supernatural stuff per se. I may sound like I might be, but I'm not. So I can't say.
Oh, you're not a cryptozoologist?
I'm
What?
not. I'm not. Sadly, I know computers. though.
Whoa, the communicating through dance thing that brings me back to the aliens. Okay, what race am I
They
thinking
they
of?
also communicate through dance.
Wasn't there-
Apparently,
yeah. There's a race I'm thinking of. This is an African race, and they had a lot of hieroglyphics and stuff. And it was actually the one that had what we talked about earlier. Or if you turned it 90 degrees to the right, it was like, oh no, it's not about this kind of animal and that kind of mammal. It's about a spaceship and a guy doing the controls. And they still to this day, and they've been doing it for 3,000 years. I'm pulling a number out of my ass, but I'm about right. Okay. And they do it every year because it's supposed to be about this time of the year. I think it's a little bit after the summer solstice. And they do this huge dance, and it's to communicate to the aliens that visited that said that they were going to come back someday. And they put one dude in this big, huge suit made out of straw and whatnot and grasses and all that. But it looks like
and dung.
it looks like a fucking astronaut suit. They put this one guy in that, and this guy represents this person that came here and gave them all of this knowledge and said, I'm going to come back. It'll be a it'll be many, 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 many generations, but we're going to come back. And they still do it to this day, and they still say like, okay, dude, we're still waiting for you. We're still waiting for you to come back. And they've resisted. They've had, this civilization has many chances to join in the technologies that we have and all that. And they say no. Because
No iPhone for me.
it's coming. We already know this guy is coming back, and they do it every year. And everybody gets naked, and they have the one dude in the straw. And one of the things this guy has, the straw spacesuit guy has, is he has a stick. Because part of their thing was like this guy back in the day, he had this stick that taught them, and he used his stick to do it. Like he brought down lightning, and the lightning, he showed them like, oh, there's this power, there's this electricity thing. And that his stick did that.
You're
and
a wizard, Harry.
And then he also
This is my boomstick.
and he used the stick to show them how to divert rivers and streams and water and do agriculture. And so there you go. There's that one.
Wingardium
Magic
Leviosa.
wand.
I'm sorry I can't remember the name of it right now. I could pull out my phone right now because I did put all the notes on my phone. But you know what? I'm drunk and lazy.
It has a phoenix feather cord. It's
But
very
Another way
it
to
was
be.
a deal.
I still think that it makes more sense that there was an advanced civilization where a small piece of it survived all the shit and could fly around the world and impress people like
I go
that.
with Rod there.
And-
Instead of
and-
aliens
and
coming
there's
from other
really no
planets,
aliens, it's
it
really
was-
just
it was-
us.
It was a visitor from
Maybe even us
another
from the
continent.
future.
It was a visitor from Atlantis, maybe. And maybe they could fly. It's like over in Wilbur Wright. Come on, they couldn't do that before ancient Rome. Yes, they could have.
Yeah, Da Vinci designed flying machines
Da
that,
Vinci had
when
at
constructed,
least one flying
he had-
machine that worked.
yeah, they were
He-
successful.
Right, and they don't give him credit for that.
I
He had
love-
at
I
least
love this
one that
helicopter.
worked, if not a couple.
I love this helicopter.
Oh, you mean the one with the spinny?
Right, and before he
helicopter.
did the helicopter, Da Vinci had several gliders.
Yes.
Several gliders that like
Yes.
he went, like all day without landing, without even touching the ground in his gliders.
That was like Da Vinci's goal to like be able to fly like that.
Well, one of many.
One of many. Yeah, he was an awesome inventor.
What if like we're still trying to communicate to aliens through dance? What if Area 51 is just full of dudes who are just like going around trying to
Shaking
record-
that booty.
Yeah, they're just like doing
They're trying
a bunch of
every
random
dance
ass-
known to man. trying
We
to
all know the
summon them.
aliens just want to probe our butts with their little
Show me
proboscis,
what you
and
got.
They want us to do
I want
the
to see
crumble
what you
crunch,
got.
and they want to come up and get some of that.
The aliens are just doing an intergalactic show, and they want to see who's got the best performers.
Yeah, it's a
see,
big intergalactic
Show me what you
talent
got.
show.
I
Show
want to
me
see
what you got.
That's why Area
The
51
Milky Way's got talent.
The winners get to go on the ship and go to them to the other planet where all the races get together and do every little thing with every little.
That's why Area 51's a secret. People are embarrassed of the way they
Who are those
dance.
two guys from The Simpsons that look like?
We have to get Swifty.
Kodos and what's the other guy?
You gotta
Krang?
get it on with those guys, and you gotta get it on with the
Krang
giant
was,
killer bee.
Teenage
That's what they
Mutant Ninja
got.
Turtles.
We have to get Swifty.
You know what?
Do not mess with Krang.
Somebody brought it up, and I'm gonna bring it up. We've gone a while, and this has been like the longest list so far.
Jesus Christ.
And we didn't even touch on stuff I wanted to touch on.
Jesus, Lord, help us.
Mackenzie,
So
would you
we
like
might
to add
join
anything?
this area again someday.
No. Mackenzie's the one who
Let's
always
go
does
over
ton
the
of
points,
research.
guys.
All right.
And this,
All
you're
right.
going to be surprised at this. You're gonna be
Mackenzie's the one who
surprised,
always
okay?
does the research. Like she designed a new species for Star Wars. I was just like coming up with shit off the spot.
Okay. People catching people and bluff points. Almost none today. Reason.
That was Dean who did
Reason.
one on Rod.
This was a less than
on
kooky version.
Daniel.
Dean got me. This was a less than kooky version of the list, and there's going to be more of those where the list actually fits into what we're talking about. Because you guys are too good at catching each other at the crap.
Between,
Blake,
like-
what did you use that didn't get caught?
I got a one-man submarine
I got that one. Yeah.
and spaceship hieroglyphs.
Dean, you got a bluff. I mean, you got a caught me. You caught me on one. And what else you got?
I got spelunking in teams.
Spelunking in teams.
Nice.
Tidal wave.
Tidal wave.
In
Yeah.
parentheses tsunami.
Uh-huh.
And curse on explorers when we were talking about Atlantis.
Yeah, that was brief, but I'm going to
Yeah.
give it because on this one, I'm trying to make it now so that it doesn't. You don't have to go off on so much of a tangent anymore. People
Right.
have to be a little more awake.
I tried to make it a
Okay.
tangent.
Gotta be woke.
Yeah.
Nobody.
Yeah, the
bits.
curse thing was hard. Sam, what do you got?
You want to take a guess what the first one I used was?
Bring me on. Give it.
Lifting with a tractor beam.
That was a big one, and it came up. It came up more than once, and we revisited it.
I bitched
Yeah.
and moaned about that several times, like tractor beam, tractor beam, tractor beam. But in any event, I got that. I got Gnomes and Fairies. I got Area 51.
Yeah,
I got
yeah.
the Bermuda Triangle.
Yeah.
I got Erupting Volcano.
Oh, you're so lucky with Bermuda Triangle.
No. I wanna.
Yeah, I helped a lot with the.
Sorry to
Bermuda
dwell on
Triangle
this, but Volcano.
I expected somebody to call it.
This
I
was
know
the
what he
one.
called
I.
it.
This was
Yeah.
the one I laughed at right before we started. It's like exactly right up until like Volcano. It's got like two O's at the end. So that was funny. And also the Flintstones car, which I would like to point out that Daniel
Yes.
actually helped me work its way into. It's
Well, I will do
made
that.
the joke
And-
about the Armenian cab driver, and
If
then
you
like I
listen to
worked that
past
into it.
lists, if you listen to past ones, you'll find there's a lot of them where I'll be the guy that kicks in when somebody starts to bring it up, and
Like
I'll
like
try
the-
to because I want to hear it more than once. Okay, Rod, what do you got?
Communicating through dance.
Oh yes, that was the last one you did. Uh-huh.
I'm going backwards. Super strong sandals.
Super strong sandals. He brought that
I
up.
remember that,
I
yeah.
was surprised none of you called it. Come on, that's such a Daniel wrote that.
Solar
Super
flares.
strong sandals. What the
Solar
that was
flares.
such a so easy. What, solar flares. Okay, yeah.
Just like a brand of sandals that's marketed like with Jesus as its as its
Right,
front
man. You
man.
can't build those pyramids without
right.
super strong sandals.
That's it. And then slaves of the slaves.
Slaves of the slaves. We went off on that one.
Slaves of slaves of slaves of love is love. is
Okay,
love is
well,
love.
believe it or not, and
Slaveception.
I am astonished. I'm just blown away. I'll read out the point. You guys are we're all gonna vomit because of who won. Blake got 2.
It happens.
Dean got 4. Rod got 4. I'm
And
not
I
gonna
got
gonna
more
read
than
them
you
all
guys.
off, but I got 5. Sam got 6. Sam Winnie wins the list today.
The Winnie wins. You go, Sam. You go. Here are my unused.
Sorry.
This was tied for second.
I gotta read it.
First time winning.
I gotta read a couple of mine off just because they're so good. I got the Oogie Boogie Man.
I was gonna call that
You should have.
I got fossils of machines. There's no such thing as a fossil of a machine because it has to be alive to be a fossil.
Well, you were like, or whatever you call it. So that was
Well, it's
like,
like
How do you think I'm gonna slip it by?
what if it's like
Backwards calendar,
When did you say that?
groveling to the gods, and cutting stone with a water pick.
That one was weird. I thought it was just water pick. That was weirdly specific.
yeah, I called them out.
You go.
All right, you guys, that's another week's episode of The List. This episode of The List Game brought to you by...
Stanko Vision.
Ooh, that's stinky.
Oh, somebody give me a towel. The List Game is listener supported. Join the List Game community at www.patreon.com/listgame. To contact the List Game crew, email listgame@cox.net. COX.